Welcome to the next episode of NALA Talks, a micro-learning series presented by the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, or DEI Committee of NALA. My name is Terry Walters, and I am the chair of the DEI Committee. The DEI Committee works to address diversity, equity, and inclusion to foster meaningful, open, and constructive dialogues throughout NALA and to celebrate diversity of its members and leaders. Today's conversation will focus on immigration with our esteemed panelists. But first, I'd like to introduce our NALA DEI committee members. We have Makia L. Clark, Rich Hahn, Crystal M. Jenkins, Christine Praria, Candace Russell, our CEO, Vanessa Finley, and our admin, Kate Benj. All of our committee members are NALA certified paralegals. We encourage paralegals to obtain their CP designation through NALA. For more information on certification, please visit our website at www.nala.org. I'd like to turn it over to Candace to begin. Candace will introduce our first panelist, Ileana. Candace?
Hello, everyone. Ileana Rivera is a seasoned immigration attorney, CEO, and lead instructor at NALA US. Licensed since 2013, she has dedicated her career exclusively to immigration law, founding and managing her own successful immigration law firm while representing thousands of clients around the United States. With over 12 years of experience, she understands how overwhelming immigration practice can feel, especially without guidance, which inspired her to establish NALA US in 2024. Through this platform, she delivers practical, self-paced training designed to give legal professionals the tools, confidence, and clarity needed to navigate complex immigration cases. Ileana holds a Juris Doctor from Inter-American University and a Bachelor of Business Administration from the University of Puerto Rico. Before becoming an attorney, she spent 2 decades in private and government management, gaining valuable organizational and leadership skills. She is an active member of the Puerto Rico Bar and U.S. District Court and the U.S. Court of Appeals. She is bilingual in English and Spanish. Ileana is passionate about making immigration law accessible and equipping professionals with real-world insights to expand their practice. Welcome to NALA, Ileana. And now I'll turn it over to Crystal to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you so much for that nice introduction.
We welcome Nikki Mehrpoo. She's a professor of law, certified immigration legal specialist. She's a certified worker compensation legal specialist, a speaker, legal expert, expert witness, legal analyst, media consultant, and author. For over 24 years, Nikki Mehrpoo has been a dedicated worker compensation and immigration advocate for the injured worker and immigrants all over the world. Nikki Mehrpoo is the first and only dual certified immigration and worker compensation legal specialist by the California State Bar Board of Legal Specialization. Ms. Mehrpoo is a nationally and internationally recognized speaker, legal analyst, media commentator, expert witness, lobbyist, and legal consultant in immigration and worker compensation law. She regularly shares her valuable insight in Japan for Forbes, France on France 5, in Iran on KIRN 670 FM, in Denmark on Extra Bladet, as well as many United States publications, including Billboard, Business Insurance, WCAuthority.com, and WorkerCompensation.com, analyzing high-profile cases, court decisions, legal issues. He currently represents clients assisting the Department of Homeland Security and Federal Bureau of Investigations with matters of national security. Nikki Mehrpoo is a global authority in AI governance, compliance, professional ethics, recognized worldwide for building the standards that define how licensed professionals use and oversee artificial intelligence responsibly. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to always support NALA and their activities, and I'm proud to be here.
I'm turning it over to Christine Praria to introduce our next speaker.
I'd like to introduce Valeria Garcia Tavarez, Esquire. Valeria was born and raised in Albuquerque and is the proud daughter of Mexican immigrants. She obtained her BA from the University of New Mexico in Spanish and Sociology with a concentration in law, and her master's in Latin American Studies. Valeria obtained her ID from the University of New Mexico School of Law. After a brief stint in civil defense litigation, Valeria was an associate attorney and manager at a private immigration firm for 4 years, where she practiced in all areas of immigration law, including advanced humanitarian, family, and citizenship case types. Valeria is now an associate managing attorney at the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center, where she provides direct legal representation to survivors of crime, domestic violence, and trafficking. She also serves as a subject matter expert for a legislative bill in New Mexico benefiting immigrant survivors of crime and engages in community advocacy and education on a regular basis. Valeria has represented clients in immigration court hearings and has attended multiple USCIS interviews in Albuquerque and other field offices in the United States, and has spoken about immigration-related topics to local and national audiences. Valeria also teaches the immigration law class at the University of New Mexico School of Law. Outside of work, Valeria is the lead singer in a live karaoke band and enjoys bird watching and nature walks with her husband. Welcome, Valeria. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute honor and pleasure to be here.
And now we turn it over to Mahia to introduce Tammy Lynn.
Hello, it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce Miss Tammy Lynn, Esquire. Tammy Lynn teaches immigration law with an emphasis on asylum law. She is the supervising attorney at the University of San Diego Legal Clinic's Immigration Clinic. Prior to joining the USD School of Law as an adjunct faculty member and supervising attorney for the Immigration Clinic, Tammy Lynn was a solo practitioner working with various organizations, including the San Diego Volunteer Lawyer Program and the Legal Aid Society of San Diego. She spent almost 9 years with Jewish Family Services of San Diego to create an asylum and immigration legal program prior to opening her own practice. Lynn also spent a year as an associate in the law offices of Peter Chu. While pursuing her JD at the USD School of Law, Lynn was a research assistant for Warren Distinguished Professor of Law Orly Lobel. Lynn graduated with a Juris Doctorate from the USD School of Law in 2006. Since then, she has served and continues to serve in various leadership roles with the American Immigration Lawyers Association, including but not limited to 2 stints as the chapter chair and chair of the National Media and Advocacy Committee. She was appointed by the mayor in 2022 to serve as a commissioner on the San Diego Civil Service Commission, and in 2015, Lynn was named as one of the top immigration lawyers in San Diego by the San Diego Daily Transcript. So welcome, Miss Tammy Lynn.
Thank y'all for having me. I really appreciate it.
So Miss Tammy Lynn, let's start with the big picture here. For those in our audience who are curious about the system today, are they generally allowing people to obtain a visa to the US?
They are. I would say things are still running, maybe not as smoothly as we've seen in the past, but I will say that everything seems to be more difficult, but people are still getting visas, people are still coming in. I think it's really just going to depend on where people are coming from, which countries, but we are seeing probably a lot more denials or for little things that maybe would not have happened before.
Great, thank you so much for that information. And I will turn it over to the next DEI member for the next question.
Ms. Lynn, under current policies, which types of visas are receiving priority when processed through the U.S. consulate abroad?
I don't necessarily know if there's a priority, but typically folks that are immediate relatives, so these are the spouses, kids under 21, parents of U.S. citizens, typically don't have to wait in a queue, a line. There's no priority date waiting for them, so they're usually ahead of everyone else. But I think in terms of businesses, there are probably certain businesses that may be able to kind of jump ahead a little bit. I'd be curious to hear about it anecdotally from my other panelists.
Can I also ask, because I mean, I know everyone's experience may be a little bit different. I've had embassies delaying like longer waiting periods for people to get their visa interviews. I recently had somebody that had to wait 9 months for an E2 interview in UK. I haven't heard of that. In the past, within a month and a half, maybe 2 months tops, they would get an interview. Also, embassies officers asking questions about things that are outside of the scope of what the process that they have at hand. So, for example, they would ask for information about relatives that are not part of their particular application. Say, well, what about your brother? Your brother also moved to the United States. Do you really have the intention of coming back, or are you just going to go live with them? Things like that. I've had people ask questions that are certainly out of the scope. So, for example, in another case, a client was asked about a prior business that they had. They're applying for this new business, and they're like, "Can you give me all the transactions and tax returns for a previous business?" And he's wondering, why would they ask me about that? I'm applying for this new business. The other one was closed. So I don't know if that's your experience also.
No, I certainly have been seeing that a lot of the questions have gone beyond the scope, and also the huge delays for things. Typically, it's been very difficult to be an immigration attorney. We can't really give them a timeline, basically. Whereas before, I could say, hey, yeah, you want to immigrate your fiance or anything like that, let's say a year. Now, it really is just so hard to gauge, as well as it depends on where they are, which embassy or consulate they're in. But yes, I have been also witnessing the outside the scope questions.
Okay. And a lot of times it's a little difficult for us to figure out if the best answer is to say, that's not part of the application. But at the same time, as Homeland Security, they may want to make sure that whatever it is that they did in the past was, according to the law. So it's it's one of those things where you're not sure what to say in a situation like that. I understand there's a statute, and they really have to go about asking the questions that they're at hand. But, stepping out of that, I feel like there's a gray area where you're like, should I be answering questions outside of the scope? Should I just please them with whatever it is, open-ended questions they want about just about anything, or how do I go about that? My take on it is, given what they're asking for with a limited amount of information, and say, and pinpoint, this is a separate, case, this is about them, and not answer altogether, but at the same time kind of narrow it. I don't know what you think.
Ileana, I completely agree. I call it technical perfection, but not overloaded with too much that they can use it against you. So we're on the same boat with that. Right now, people talk about the AI Wild West. No. We're in the immigration Wild West. Nothing that has been part of our existence as advocates and as immigration attorneys is the same, where I would be able to answer something with experience, with ability to tell people, this is what I saw happening yesterday, or this is what's happening across the nation, or Ayla would tell us what's going on, so we would rely on it. None of that exists in our current situation and status that we're in, and I wanted to make sure we all agreed upon some level of craziness that's happening, and let everyone know we're trying to guide you, but nothing is the same anywhere, and it's a free-for-all. So advocacy is more important than ever right now.
I think the best way to describe it is they are finding more reasons to deny than to give you the benefit. And it goes across the board, be it consulate processing, or if it's any applications that used to be very simple, they're going to try to find something on you to deny it.
Agreed.
And I think even just to briefly add on that as well, on the humanitarian side, for folks who are processing some kind of humanitarian visa abroad, more commonly like a U visa or a T visa. I mean, for any audience members who don't know this, advocates are not allowed to go into consular interviews with clients, right? So that level of complication already is kind of tough to overcome, because as my fellow panelists were saying, they're asking questions that they have never really asked before. I haven't been in practice for more than 10 years, but in the 10 years I have been, I mean, the change in the discourse is very, very shocking in a lot of ways. And I think even beyond the actual consular interview piece, again, from the humanitarian perspective, doing things like getting fingerprints submitted to the United States government can be very challenging depending on what country our clients are in. There are, for example, in Mexico, where there are more than one consular offices, they are asking clients to travel to Mexico City just to get their fingerprints done, when clients who are already, you know, potentially victims of crime or derivatives of victims of crime in the United States don't have access to means to travel, right? And so there are just a lot of like roadblocks that are being put in place, not only at the interview stage, but everything leading up to that interview, that makes it so much more difficult to get from point A to point B.
And Valeria, as the senior amongst you with 30 years of immigration experience, I'm going to let you know it's not just the questions they're asking that is different. It's the way they're asking it, the way they're treating you. That concept of humanity, or that concept of professional respect. And I don't know what guidance or mandate they've been given internally, but their entire existence is different in the way they're processing applications, where they're not thinking about it as a benefit that is legally given to people based on the law. They're thinking about it in a way that, how am I going to find a way to deny or mess this up so that this doesn't go forward?
Thank you. I'll pass it on to the next DI committee member for the next question.
So on the other side, what are the most common reasons that people are being denied visa or refused entry? Are there specific reasons that come up a lot?
The questions they're asking are causing the problems, because they're asking questions above and beyond the realm of the visa or the realm of what the qualifications are. And then by going outside of the normal questions and asking anything and everything, they're finding a way to bring it back to deny something. And at least that's what my experience has been, in that they're just trying to be creative in any way to deny applications.
I agree on that totally. I would also say that when it comes to consular processing, it's very opaque. As Valeria had mentioned, attorneys aren't allowed to go in there. Other people aren't allowed to go in there. Only the applicant is allowed to go in for the interview. So it's a very, you know, our clients are telling us what's going on there. We're not able to witness it firsthand. And there was even a lawsuit, I think, was it last year or this year, but SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, said there was no legal right for attorneys to be there. So they're making it already harder. It was already harder to begin with. And even the denials themselves are very, very opaque, in that they don't specify, we are denying you because we believe you have intent to stay and you're not supposed to. They basically cite a statute or a code section, and there's no appealable process on that as well. So that is the final arbiter of kind of what happens. This consular officer has this interview with your client. You hear third hand of what happened. They deny it. You have to kind of guess based on the context clues of what the conversation was about, and make an educated guess, but we don't necessarily know. We can't appeal to them. So that's kind of the problem.
I think a piece of that as well, even outside of the consular context, for affirmative applications filed in the United States to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, a lot of these benefits that people are applying for have a very big discretionary factor, right? Meaning that it is up to the adjudicating officer's discretion whether or not there are more positive factors than negative factors in a person's immigration history, criminal background, that makes them eligible for immigrant or non-immigrant visas, right? And so I think that that is a piece that this administration specifically is really leaning into, of expanding what it means to have negative discretionary factors. USCIS was issued a directive from the Department of Homeland Security in August of this year, saying that a big expansion on this discretionary overview includes looking at an applicant's involvement in things like protest and other, just social activism. They use very broad language on, involvement in terrorist activities, but what that actually is interpreted as is what is sort of making it complicated and chilling, right? Again, on the affirmative side, I'm having to talk to my clients who are getting ready for their citizenship interviews what their social activism looks like, what their social media looks like, because that all is now becoming fair game for reasons to deny, as my colleagues are saying, that they're trying to find reasons to deny. And this discretionary piece is really, really ripe for them to interpret and then apply that interpretation in very sweeping ways, as we're seeing.
I think that applies even more to consular processing interviews. I think they more likely than not will look at your social media if you're applying for a visa abroad. And that's because they're outside, so really they don't have a lot of contact with what's happening inside the US. And so that's the one thing that would give them a little more light about who this person is and what their abouts are.
And whether your application is getting adjudicated abroad or here in the United States, everyone needs to realize that maybe a drug or marijuana or whatever is legal in your state. Immigration is federal law, and as such, that's an automatic no to anybody. So please, your social media, your comments, the way you portray yourself in the world as an immigrant matters. And you need to make sure that it's not that you're just abiding by state law, but that you're actually abiding by federal law, because they're different.
And going a little bit back about the priority of which ones are being prioritized, I've had interviews for naturalization scheduled within 30 days, 90 days, which was unusual. In the past, in my average, they would be 9 months, and those were speed up for whatever reason. And then with a green card application, 6 months, 7 months, they used to be more like a year on average. I don't know what the experience of you are, but I'm in Florida, so that's what I've been getting.
Yeah, I think it depends. I mean, unfortunately, in the humanitarian landscape, the opposite is true. And we can talk about backlogs a little further down the road. But yeah, the backlogs that already exist in the humanitarian context are becoming even more prevalent, and we're seeing a lot of issues with even receipt notices not being issued by USCIS for, I don't know, I've had a case that I filed in the summer that we haven't seen receipt notices for. So yeah, in terms of prioritization, it's like a weird shift, like Ileana was saying, where some cases are being fast-tracked and some cases are being backlogged even more than they already were.
Imagine this, we live in a world where we see how people are being treated in public, in the news, in everywhere. That's the same way the priority of those applications are being treated. So look at it. If it's a humanitarian request, it's not a priority for them. We used to be in a world where immigration, humanitarian requests, asylum, those were the priorities of certain types of processing. And now it's the exact opposite. So what we see in the news and how people are being treated is the same way that people are being treated in the processing and adjudication of those applications. So you have to look at it in that they're trying to process citizenship a lot faster because they're wanting to be the good guy with US citizens who have legal status already, and then be more punitive towards undocumented.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Christine for our next question.
Thank you. And I know this is going to be different depending on which country, which region somebody is coming from, but let's say I want to emigrate to the United States legally, what is the most important thing for me to know when I'm right at the beginning and I have no idea, I've just decided I want to emigrate to the United States? What do I need to do?
I think more than ever, they need to talk to an immigration professional, an immigration attorney with experience that has current kind of understanding of the nuances of this administration under 2.0. We saw it in 1.0. It's drastically worse in 2.0, but they will be able to guide them to make sure that they don't fall into these traps that we kind of keep bringing up, or that they're doing in these interviews. The second thing I always tell clients is, tell me everything, tell me the truth. And I need the history of everything. If you've been in the United States 30 years or 5 years or even, a year, I need to know all the ins and outs of everything, because they will know and they will then use that against you. So I think always being truthful to the government, always being truthful to your attorney, and also just making sure you talk to a professional. Please don't talk to a notario. Please don't talk to your family friend's mom who immigrated 10 years ago, or even most recently, TikToks. TikTok says this is easy. This is how you do it. Nothing is easy, and anyone claiming that it's easy right now is likely not really sure what's the current landscape.
And any attorney who tells you about the benefits without discussing all of the risks with you, run away from that attorney, because right now the benefits are as important as the risks and knowing what the consequences are. And so there are people who will come and try to sell you to do a visa, and before you do that, if they're not telling you about all the different types of risks that could come into play, run from that person, because right now you need immigration attorneys like my co-panelists who care about the individual and who care about their family and what's going to happen to everybody. So please consider the risks as well as the benefits.
Yeah, I heartily agree with that. In my private practice and even at the law school clinic, we are taking longer in filing things because we want to evaluate everything. Someone says to us, I think in the 90s, I had an issue. We're doing FBI background checks, not for everyone, because we're concerned that, will that trigger them on the radar of the government? But we might do FBI background checks, California DOJ checks. We're doing everything we can before we will submit that paperwork. And we are letting them know over and over again about what the risks are, because what we don't want is to put someone in a more precarious situation. We are seeing them sending people away without even getting to see a judge. And so it's hard for me to say this to people because they are eligible for these forms of relief. But sometimes I've been saying, you know what, I don't think it's worth the risk. Let's wait for a few more years. You're in an okay situation. We don't want to make it worse.
And I think that's why.
Prepare them for the worst, meaning that they need to, everybody who is in any way undocumented and is unsettled right now needs to have an emergency plan, needs to have their backup plan. They need to have the backup plan, and make sure childcare and family assets and things like that are in someone's hand where they can handle it. People are going poof, disappearing, literally, and without a plan in place, that can cause a lot more trauma than it already is causing.
And I think that a big necessary way to do that level of risk assessment, not only with filing the application, but also, like Nikki was saying, the risk assessment of getting detained, of getting deported, of getting disappeared, has to come with trust and truth between advocates and their clients. I can tell you, and I'm sure my co-panelists also have some crazy stories of client situations that go even more south because we're finding out information from clients that they withheld from us prior to filing, and now we're at the interview stage, or we're at the pending phase, and we're trying to scramble and figure out how to fix the record, how to amend the application, or potentially withdraw the application because now we have new information that we now realize actually disqualifies a client. And so it's very, very important to be super, super open to whoever it is that's representing you. Because I mean, I don't know, I come from an immigrant background, and I would much rather be told, you know what, it is far too risky given your history, than me cherry picking what I'm going to tell my lawyer. And then before I know it, ICE is using the information on my application to detain me because I failed to disclose, you know, something very crucial to my lawyers. And so in order for us to do the necessary screening and risk assessment, that level of honesty and trust with your advocate is absolutely crucial.
And I've been finding that I have to go above and beyond. I trust my clients. I vet them very well. They trust me. I've been with them for a long time. But even a month ago, I had one of my clients get arrested at an adjustment interview for his green card. Cuban adjustment shouldn't be a problem. He had an arrest. It wasn't something that would make him inadmissible and deniable on this form of relief. But he had told me he had finished probation. I trusted him because I've known him for a long time. He did not finish probation. He had missed something. ICE was there, picked him up, took him out, showed everyone, you know, him being arrested, and he was taken to county jail. He's released now, but he has to go through all that trauma of everything. And if he would have just at least told me. So now, even for clients where I used to just take it on their word that they're done with probation or anything like that, no, I am now looking for every single one of them. I am doing my due diligence even more so. And at the clinic, I've been putting in a policy for my students and my staff that if there is nothing that we can do for them or it's too risky, we will write up at least a letter explaining in very layperson's terms the analysis of what the risks are and why we are not going to be able to move forward with them. So they have something in hand. And as Valeria said, oftentimes, I don't know how many times we've all done consultations. There's nothing we can do for some people, and they appreciate us telling them that because they have already spent so much thousands of dollars on other people making promises that it was not going to go anywhere. So I think trust is one of the most important things both ways, but even more so, unless you really don't care whether or not you might be put in proceedings and removed, you have to be truthful.
And this is the one thing I hear, Tammy, about a follow-up to that. Why is the attorney down the street saying I can do A, B, and C, and you're saying don't do anything and giving me all this, saying go, just protect yourself and things like that? Because if you are a true advocate for immigrants, and if you are yourself, and I think I have panelists here that are, all of us are, I'm a refugee from Iran from 45 years ago. So to me, I know what an immigrant coming to the United States and what it takes to be part of the United States. Please, if someone who you trust and someone who really is being genuine and authentic with you, telling you don't do something, okay? Versus someone who's telling you to do something and you don't know the exact outcome, think twice about that before you go willy-nilly filing an application or saying, oh, this person is telling me what's going on. Because right now, our jobs are more about protecting people not to get into trouble versus sometimes, unfortunately, being able to advocate for them when they are in trouble. So we have to play our roles in different ways right now in this immigration Wild West.
And I think to echo that, it is a landscape right now that's very frightening. And we try very hard not to scare our clients more, but we need to be realistic of what's going on. My father, I'm a daughter of immigrants. My father is 82 years old, very healthy, but he's a naturalized citizen. I told him, carry your passport card with you. We are right at the border in San Diego. I would hope that they wouldn't target an 82-year-old Asian man, but you just don't know. And even though his passport card's expired, I said, Dad, I'd rather this than to have you detained and me having to find you because you talk with an accent. And in San Diego, a week before my client was arrested, my good friend's mother, a 71-year-old grandmother, U.S. citizen, was doing court observation in our courts at the immigration court, and she was arrested and detained for 8 hours because one of the ICE officers ran into her and accused her of assault. And they released her after we made a whole hubbub and media and everything. But that is 8 hours that they held a US citizen down at the federal building. So again, I don't want to scare the clients. I don't want, for y'all's members to feel so anxious and scared. But Nikki's right. Our job as advocates is to protect people at this point.
And just remember, not everyone is a Tammy, Ileana, or Valeria. That's very, very important, because there are still people out there who are thinking about their bottom line and how they can make more money. And I'm just being honest, so I hope everyone is on par with me, because if we're trying to educate people right now about DEI, it's about saying, don't trust anyone unless you know what risks you're taking.
Thank you very much for that, and I'll turn it over to the next DEI member. I believe it's Candace to ask the next question.
All right, switching subjects for a little bit. Immigration is a topic that is filled with strong opinions and quite often misinformation. What is one of the most common myths about immigration that you frequently encounter?
Do it the right way and wait in line, and you're a good person, so they will not target you. I think you're seeing that more and more. We're seeing that in the news. We're seeing it anecdotally from people in Middle America. Why would they send him away? He's a really good guy. This happened 30 years ago. He's done his time. This administration does not care. Also, wait times are very old, and I use this over and over again, and my students, I don't think, are going to understand when I make this analogy or make this kind of explanation of things. But the last time the immigration system, the immigration laws were updated was in 1996, like the most major overhaul. So we are basically, the quotas we have, everything that the wait times is based on a very outdated system, because Congress is not doing its job. They politicized it instead of making it update and modernizing it. So the way I explain it is, it's like running your business and your computer on Windows 97 right now. Things don't work. It's outdated. It's not going to work. I talk to my students about this. They all have Apple MacBooks and everything. I don't think they know what I'm talking about when I talk about Windows 97, but that's basically what's going on right now. Is instead of politicizing it, which they have been doing for so long, it's been, what is that, 30 years, over 30 years maybe, of just having quotas and laws that are not for how our economy and our world is now.
And the biggest criticism that I have for all of this, I'm so sorry, is the fact that I feel like the wait for families to reunite, to have, spouses together, 5 forms, 6 forms, all in one paper file, for you to have your spouse at your own household and be able to live together. And those delays, those RFEs, all that extra information that they need over and above what you've already thoroughly explained in a packet, to just rehash the fact that they have the income over the guideline, to rehash that they have a bona fide marriage, to just overthink everything, and taking so long to take all these papers from one lockbox to a service center, to an office, to, an officer, to, oh my goodness, and not have something more efficient than that. The same form questions repeated over throughout the other forms. People have to choose whether they can file a work authorization or a travel document, when who would not want to have both if they're applying for a green card? Wouldn't they both want to have the benefit of traveling and working while they wait for however long the government wishes to take to make a decision on this? Well, how is that an option? How is that not something that is built into the process itself without the extra forms? The same background check, same information over and over. And why do we, isn't it absurd at this point that with the technology that we have, the electronic filings that we have, all this information can be filed all at once. You fill this fields over and over, and it just helps you, it just makes it so much easier to make mistakes, to, you know, just duplicate effort. I think that, I mean, I'm not in the political side and I don't really talk about politics, but the way that, yes, it's too old and absurd at this point.
I also would say that I think it's become a very privileged system in that they are pricing people out, not only in the fees, but they are doing this in the humanitarian realm. They are now just recently saying that humanitarian parole, these are for people that have very dire situations to come into the country temporarily, $1,000 for that to happen. And these are people, you know, we were having folks coming from Afghanistan or whatever after the fall of Kabul, having to pay just the fees before that, and now you're saying $1,000 for that. A green card application, I think the myth is people don't understand how expensive it is. $1,440. Applying for your spouse to come in, $675. You want a work permit while you're here, $260 if you're applying. So altogether, it's so pricey, and they are also doing this to people who cannot afford it and also are seeking refuge here. They are now making it that you want to apply for asylum, got to pay $100. Every year you have to pay $100. You want to get a work permit while you're waiting because the wait times might be 10 years. Okay, well that is going to be an extra $700. So they are pricing people out, and it's almost as if to discourage, and then also make it that, you know, if so, I hear this so much. Someone's been here for 30 years, they're eligible to get a green card and become a citizen. They should have been a citizen. Why didn't they do it yet? They don't have the money for it. It's very expensive. They might try to do it on their own. This is how people go into not seeing notarios, things like that. Attorneys are expensive. I used to work in the nonprofit realm for 9 years. They're overburdened. We can't help everyone. So free services are also just very inundated.
And immigration, to me at least, is not a Democrat issue or a Republican issue. It's an administration issue. And by that, I mean that the administration that's in office gets to apply the rules the way they want, they decide. And it's not just with our current administration. With every administration, we've had it where the president in office changes the way the immigration system is decided, the way it is looked at. So it's not a Democrat or a Republican thing. It's just that we are here to make sure you understand this administration is applying things completely different than what we've been used to for the last however many years that we've been doing it. So it's about educating others about the fact that it's just different, and it's not that we're advocating right or wrong. We're just saying be prepared for what's happening.
And I think that just to add, I absolutely agree with what everyone has been saying. What I tell my students when we're talking about the history of immigration law in the United States, it is historically a closed door policy unless you can maybe fit in this very, very small crack of exceptions to immigrate into the United States. And so to Tammy's point of this false narrative of, well, do it the right way. Well, why don't people just become citizens? Why don't people just do it? They've been here forever. Not only could they perhaps not afford it, but maybe they just don't qualify. Maybe there is not a pathway for them, or the only pathway that's available for them requires them to spend 10 years outside of the United States, be separated from their families, be separated from the country they've been living in for the majority of their life, and spend 10 years in a country they haven't been in for at least that long. And so it's just a big dismantling of the misunderstanding around immigration law, is having to really wrap your head around the fact that our immigration laws are designed to be a rejection unless you meet a very small window of exceptions.
Yeah, I think last time I said 1996 is when they updated it. It was called the Legal Immigration, Immigrant Responsibility Act, and it was a punitive And this was under the Clinton administration. So Nikki's right. It's very much just, it doesn't matter. It should, again, should never be politicized, but it was their approach in 96 to stem illegal immigration. And my argument's always been, when I've done advocacy and lobbying for you know, political reform on this, is y'all had 30 years to try this approach against illegal immigration. It clearly doesn't work and made it worse and is punitive. So if I was elected to office, I would say, get rid of 212A9, you know, A9C and all those unlawful presence things. It didn't work. But unfortunately, again, for the past 30 plus years, they have not been doing their job in Congress. And so what's going on is the executive branch has been having to then change things back and forth because it should be legislated by Congress, and they have not been.
The 1996 Act under the Clinton administration is draconian compared to all the prior acts that had been passed as part of immigration law. So we need to make sure that everyone's clear about that. Under the Clinton administration, we had that happen as a result of domestic terrorism. Just so you know, one of the issues that why we started talking about that law was because there was the Oklahoma City bombing under the Clinton era, and they were trying to make America safe. So they went, did this new law, but it didn't just change the standard from here to here. It went from here to here in regards to how the law changed. So it's very important that everyone understands we're under a 30-year-old law that everyone is still complaining about from day one, and it has no avenue of proper immigration for undocumented to do it the way they used to do it, which was suspension of deportation and proceed in that way. So when you've made this standard so impossible, and then you want to complain about undocumented, that's not going to connect with each other, because you've gone and made it impossible, and now you want to complain about undocumented. There needs to be a fix. There doesn't need to be laws that keep continuing making it more difficult for good people to be able to continue living their lives.
And what do you think some of those changes should or could be in the future?
Oh, I have a dream list. Again, get rid of unlawful presence. Every time I go, you know, AILA, American Immigration Lawyers Association, we do Lobby Day, National Day of Action. I go there, I say every single time, just get that little part, throw that part out. Throw that part out. That will allow a lot of the undocumented folks who have no avenue, who are, you know, parents of US citizens or whatever, they can leave the country, and then they can come back in consular process, and both sides can make that argument, like, look, we got rid of all the folks that are undocumented. And then we can also, yeah, they're coming back in the right way. But again, 30 years of this draconian law, the perfect word, I don't know why I didn't think of draconian when you were talking, you know, when you're talking about it, Nikki, I was like, yes, it's so draconian. Get rid of that provision. That's just one little part that I think we could update, but that is my wish list.
Yeah, Tammy, I was in AILA Lobby Day about 4 weeks before 9/11. Okay, and we were actually lobbying for 245 extension, 245I extension, and people were actually engaging with us and listening to us and wanting that United States citizens married to other people to go forth. So we were thinking it's gonna happen, and then unfortunately we had a traumatic experience with 9/11, and as such, again, we have to look at the fact that we can't complain about a broken system if we don't try to fix it in any way. The system in itself is broken, and the laws are way old and not up to date based on the existence of our society.
I would also increase the visa cap for new visa applicants. I think, I mean, obviously I'm biased because my focus, the focus of my work right now is in humanitarian-based forms of relief. But I mean, for victims of violent crimes, from submitting an application to having your green card is 15 to 20 years worth of a wait time. I have had clients die during that time, because in what universe should a person have to wait 20 years to become a lawful permanent resident? So again, speaking to like the sort of misinformation around doing it the right way, well, sometimes the right way is impossible because you have to wait long periods of time. Or if you're in a certain preference category, right, and you don't have your priority date current, so you have to wait decades before you can even file a residency application or go through the consular processing application process.
Yeah, I think that goes back to needing to update the system, because these quotas are from the 90s. That's why siblings, it's taking maybe 15 years. If you're Mexican, Filipino, Chinese, Indian, maybe it's like 20 years. And when you tell people that, so especially folks that just became citizens, I want to apply for my brothers and sisters. I can't wait for them to get here. I'm sorry, it's probably going to be 20 years. But yes, put in the application. And why is that? Because the quota numbers are so outdated. And these are all things that have to be done by Congress. You know, yeah, why is there a 10,000 cap on the U visas and it's a 10-year long wait? Why is cancellation or removal for non-LPRs also capped at 10,000 and there's such a long wait? These are all things that should legislatively be fixed. And instead, we are working in a very difficult situation of banging our heads against the wall, working in the confines of what we have.
If the system is broken and you don't want to fix it, the system is going to continue being broken. And at some point, we're going to have to really step up and figure out, under any administration, how we actually address the issue instead of just complain about the issue.
So the part with the Congress, you know, we know that's a long process. It may take a little while if they want to do something comprehensive, but administratively inside the agency, I believe there are so many different things they can do that do not require so much stirring, and they can actually move things a little bit faster, more efficient. So antiquated right now, so antiquated, and you know, they're straining their employees. I would imagine, I don't work for government, but I imagine, because I've been there on Saturdays, I also work on Saturdays for interviews and things like that, and it's because all these things in paper, all the, you know, for the majority, because I know there's quite a few applications that can be filed online, but oh my goodness, the amount of paper that has to be processed for employment cases, for example, all these things, all in paper, for somebody, a human being, to read through all those papers, and the same thing kind of repetitive over and over, you know, for different forms that ask the same thing. I just don't quite understand how that even came about. When I started, the 485 application had like 6 or 9 pages. And you know, they're adding all this extra information, and you know, again, it's just to disqualify more people. But you know, then you have to enter the same information for all the other forms, and you're sending it all together. How is that? Those things they can fix, I believe, with just a lot less effort, and they would be able to have more hands to do other things and be more efficient. That would be, to me, kind of a priority. It's something that they can actually do, and the rest we can all think about it and we can talk to Congress about, but you know how difficult that is for them to.
I would even say, though, this administration intentionally is making it slower. They're throwing wrenches, you know, into the cogs of the machine, because good policy, interview waivers. Why are we having people go to interviews when it's a U.S. citizen applying for their mom? It is obvious that that is an approvable thing. Sure, there's a criminal record, there's some kind of inadmissibility, you want to interview them, but that was a godsend when that was going on in the last administration, and they were going through cases quicker and, you know, waiving interviews on these cases. Now I'm having, I think next week I have a person that got granted asylum that has to go in for an interview, because now everyone has to be interviewed, and this would have been approved without it, and it just delays everything. So I think it's both intentional on this current administration to make things slow down, to make people just have to live in this kind of limbo while they're waiting and make the process more difficult, and getting rid of good policies that could be done administratively and maybe not through the legislative process. They're just doing that left and right.
Thank you. So many great ideas to improve the system. And now I will turn it over to Terry for the next set of questions.
A key point of confusion is the consequence of overstaying a visa. Many assume it's a criminal act, but it's a civil infraction. Can you please discuss the legal distinction and why it matters?
I feel like this is a topic that if you're an immigration advocate, you're like, yes, please shout it from the mountaintops. It's not. So, I mean, the big thing for me is, especially this year, with an increase in enforcement against undocumented people or documented people and citizens and everybody, is that the issue with not being able to make that distinction is that people who are sort of feeding into this anti-immigrant rhetoric are then more easily able to go, well, yeah, but if they're here illegally, then, you know, you shouldn't be breaking the law. So then maybe it's okay that you get detained and deported. When, I mean, as you said in your question, Terry, that's just not the case, right? It is a civil infraction, not a criminal violation. And so it by not creating that distinction and not being clear, and on the contrary, what we're seeing with this administration is using that language of illegal immigrants, it makes it easier for the general public to look at, you know, newsreels of people getting detained and beaten and disappeared and detained for God knows how long. It makes it more digestible, right? Because it allows us to excuse that act by going, well, but if they are committing a crime by being here illegally, it just makes it easier to digest. And I think that that is a huge, huge issue now, especially with this drastic increase in enforcement.
And the general public, once it hits home, once it's one of their friends, one of their people, someone in their community, someone in their world, then they start realizing the realities of it. So a lot of people don't understand the consequences of what's happening until it hits home. So the general public can have an opinion about it because it's just, it's not happening directly to them, and it's not directly happening to their community. But then when it does, the general public is like going, what the heck is going on? So you have to understand that people have to feel the consequences, unfortunately, in order to be part of the solution versus the problem.
And sometimes what I have folks do, or have my students do, is think about it. We as American citizens have a lot of privilege in going to countries without visas, right? But we have to follow their immigration laws as well. And if you can imagine the outrage that would happen if a US citizen overstays their visa by a day or 2 days or whatever it is, and next thing you know, they're thrown into a jail or a detention facility without any due process. Typically what happens is you go through the process, and then you have to you violate immigration laws, and then that country has the right to deport you. But we also have mechanisms, they have mechanisms in place. What we're seeing now is they are trying to overcome those mechanisms in the United States, not let people actually even have an opportunity to talk to a judge, violate their due process rights. And the other thing I'd also want people to understand is, yes, it is a civil infraction. There are very few criminal laws when it comes to violating or overstaying a visa. And any type of immigration criminal laws, it usually deals with trafficking, it usually deals with smuggling, but an actual criminal law in the federal, statutes, it isn't in there. And it's not a jailable offense typically for having overstayed a visa. And if anything can be conveyed, is that ICE, same thing. They are not law enforcement in the respect that we think of it. They are civil. So they cannot just come and have their own warrants and take people away. And so, you know, in doing Know Your Rights presentations, that's something that oftentimes I have to really explain. And you see that light bulb moment, both when you kind of have them understand it, or when Nikki says their family member, their good friend, someone in the community they trust, all of a sudden is shuffled away to a detention facility, and they're just wondering, like, what is going on here?
With that overstaying with the workers in Georgia with the EV plant and the show of force and how they handcuffed these people and put chains around their feet, I was shocked. I am like, is that how you treat people that are actual workers? They're not criminals. They're not doing anything other than show up to work to help grow the U.S. economy. I cannot imagine what they would do for others. I mean, it was just like unbelievably done, and it was all national news. So I think the idea behind all of this is just making it really, really scary for people that are here on visas. And on the flip side, I try to make sure that I give them the right information. Visas can be extended. You know, make sure that you call someone that knows about immigration that can help you figure things out to where you try not to fall in a situation like this. For whatever the reason, I know it happens, and I've actually filed extensions after the fact and have gotten them approved, even though they're outside of the validity period, and they will accept them. A lot of people don't know that. They don't even know that they can extend their stay. So it's also lack of information, I think, a lot of times, unfortunately.
And the same thing I've been saying for many, many, many years. If nothing else, we should get the word out. Don't sign anything. They can, I used to say this to people, and I think I mean it more now than ever. If they say we're gonna kill your family member if you don't sign this, the difference is they're not going to kill the family member, but if you sign that, you're killing all your rights and your benefits. So you need to make sure you understand signing something, even if they say it's the best, you're coming back, we're forgiving you for everything, you can come back. Do not sign anything at any time, even if you're in custody.
Okay, thank you very much for your responses, ladies. I'm going to turn the next question over to Micaiah.
Thank you so much, ladies. Let's talk a little bit about the practical realities here. What are the typical fees and costs associated with the legal immigration process from that application to the final approval?
If we're talking about the processing fees for green card applications for families, if they're here, which, you know, at this point, it's probably a better idea just because they spend the time together while they're waited, and we just don't know what would happen at the embassy in an interview and the long waits. The processing fees are high, and I know there are some fee waivers, and maybe I can get help on that area, but the full price fees for green card application is $1,440. For a petition is $675. For work authorization is $260, and for a travel document is $670. So it all adds up. It adds up to a good amount of money. If you're hiring a lawyer to help you with the process, then you would have to add that to those fees. And those you pay up front. Those are fees that if you don't put that in the packet at the beginning of the package, they won't open the package and look at it. And sometimes they'll even look at the packet, deny it for whatever the reason, and ask you to refile it the way they want things to be filed. So it is very expensive, and people carry that burden. It's an agency that is self-funded. That's why they were not closed during the government shutdown. They fund themselves with the monies that they raise from these fees. But it's very questionable what they do with such high fees for what they're doing with one particular file. Because if everything is put together in one file, somebody can sit with it in 1 hour, make a decision, and be done with it. Other than doing a background check, there's nothing more to it. They have the information, they qualify for it. That's all there is to it. So to me, it's very questionable why it takes that much money to get that processed.
Well, and those are for clean cases. We're not even talking cases, right? So that's almost, maybe, I'm trying to do the math in my head. I'm not a math person. What is it, like $1,700, maybe $1,800 overall? Well, actually, it's probably more than that. I think it's almost $2,000 if you're immigrating someone, getting their green card here. If they have any disqualifiers and inadmissibilities, I call them disqualifiers to make it simple, a waiver for that. So basically, in the communities, they call them a perdon or a pardon. That's over $1,000, right? If they're doing consular processing and they have an unlawful presence, so they have to get a waiver for, I think, what are we up to now, guys? Is it like 700 or 600 something? So these are things that are in addition to, so clean cases, already very pricey, a little bit more kind of nitty gritty, difficult, not difficult, but just some issues with them, even more pricey. If it gets denied, you go to immigration court, even more pricey, because you really cannot do immigration court without an attorney. So, you know, back to kind of what I was talking to my panelists, we were talking about, it is very expensive to immigrate here.
And Tammy, it's not even just a convoluted case. There's penalties for 245 A applicants who want to file. There's penalties. There for an immigrant who's here and making low wages to be able to save up that kind of money is nearly impossible when they're trying to just survive. So immigration has financial consequences in a way that you have to consider the individual not just wanting to sit on their hands and not do not process it. There's fees in every direction, and then there's fees for even if they deny it, then there's the appeal, and then there's this, there's that. So the fact of the matter is, you literally have to plan years in advance in order to save up money to do something to this regard.
Well, and even the employment side. So they raised the fees, was that last year, this year? It's all rolling together. And then they raised the fees again. And so, but employment side, premium processing, you don't get this when it's family immigration. But I think when I started out, premium processing, it was expensive, but it wasn't a lot. But I think it's up to 2,000. Ileana, I think you probably know better.
Close to 2,800. It's
Yeah.
3,000 for the family package, and you pay that per person. So yes. It's absurd. That's what I'm saying. If somebody hands me a file, I'm a USCIS officer, somebody hands me a file for a green card application, everything is in there. It takes me a full hour maybe to, you know, nitpick everything, check that everything is in there, and check all the boxes from the checklist that they have as officers, and I'm done. So $3,000 worth of that just puts into context how convoluted the system is and how many hands this goes through here, that, and the other. I mean, other than fingerprinting the person and background checking them, what else is there to it? You know, a potential interview. Okay, so you sit there an hour. Add that, and you know how they figure these prices out. It's beyond me. I really don't understand that part. If you figure it out by the hour, it doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up. How many hours of work does to review one application? It doesn't take that much, in my opinion. But yeah, the fees for a 212 is 1,175. For an I-601A is 775. So if you have to get your green card outside of the United States, after you pay for all that, when you come back in, they ask you for $220 for the actual plastic.
Well, it went up. It's $235. Remember, it went up. It was $220.
No, $235. So you know, that's how they do things.
Well, and then when you compare that with how long it takes for these applications to get adjudicated, even just a work permit. I couldn't tell you how many clients that we filed work permit renewal applications. One form, passport photos, should be pretty easy, and clients are waiting for over a year. So you think our clients are being forced to pay all of these fees that directly fund USCIS, at least on the state side aspect of it. And then these delays happen. I mean, it just, or like the for a 990, right? For a green card renewal, if your 10-year green card is expiring and you just want to renew your green card, that could take potentially over a year, if not longer. And so it's just, that's what makes it frustrating, is that we have to ask our clients to pay these fees to the immigration department in exchange for not getting a response. Your work permit gets printed with incorrect information, with the wrong birthday, or like Nikki was saying, if a case gets denied and now you have to appeal it, even if it was denied based on USCIS error, clear USCIS error, you still have to pay the application fee for the appeal. So it's just, I don't remember which of my colleagues mentioned this earlier, but it really is just pricing immigrants out of being persuaded to file any kind of immigration application, even something as simple as a work permit renewal or a green card renewal.
All right, thank you so much, ladies. I'm going to pass it on to the next DEI committee member for the next question.
Well, I know we do have to wrap it up, but I do have one last question, more so geared towards the nonprofit panelists. For immigrants or their families, what are some of the most valuable resources, nonprofits, legal aid, community groups available to them?
I think that at least on the New Mexico side of things, there is a lot of positivity that's happening in response to a very bleak immigration landscape. I think it is foolish to not talk to our clients about family preparedness, about emergency planning, establishing power of attorney and child care concerns for kids, for access to bank account information, all of that sort of thing. And there are a lot of organizations that are really, really helping with that. There's a lot of also just like collaboration between organizations. Again, just speaking for New Mexico, different legal aid organizations that are helping with the power of attorney side, with the kinship guardianship side, so that if undocumented folks or just generally anyone who is not a U.S. citizen, and even then, if you have concerns regarding your safety, regarding the safety of your families, know that there are organizations in your state that are more likely than not collaborating with each other to help you be prepared for the worst case scenario. A lot of our Know Your Rights trainings that were happening at the beginning of the year involved language around, well, these are your constitutional rights, make sure that you defend them. And that's still very important now. But the conversation is also shifting to, we have to assume that your constitutional rights will be ignored or violated completely. These are the plans you should have in place for your families. And so I would recommend just really resorting to those resources in the nonprofit sector of, just like I said, your local law school, if they have clinics like mine and Tammy's do, where we are helping families in making sure that they are as prepared as possible for a worst case scenario.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Valeria said. I think that if there is a local law school near you, see if they have any type of immigration clinic. Not all of them do, but they likely might have a professor that teaches that, anything like that, that will be in tune with the resources in your community. I think it's been very disheartening to see everything that's going on in the news, but these Know Your Right trainings, I've been doing them for local businesses now that want to protect their employees, that want to make sure that people, their customers, feel safe. So that has been very heartening to see a communities coalescing around kind of the unfairness and unjust actions and violations of constitutional rights. And I think also, you know, nonprofits are overburdened, but they will provide you what I would say the real. They will give you what is and is not something, because they're not looking for profit. They're not getting paid to take your case. So talk with them first and make sure they're a trusted source. Do your due diligence, research. How long has this organization been around? Have people had complaints filed against them? Anything like that. The more long established the organizations have been, the more I would say probably you could maybe trust them to kind of be sustainable and be doing things for the right reasons. But I am looking, you know, I was thinking about this near the end of our talk of we're giving a lot of doom and gloom. It is a very scary time, but I try to also be somewhat optimistic in that people are waking up. People, as Nikki said, are seeing things for what's really going on. and that is increasing the mobilization of communities that maybe didn't have an opinion on immigration or against immigration, now being like, this is not right, right? So I do appreciate that. And even though we are saying it's gotten difficult, people are getting denied, we are still getting wins. I am still getting clients granted asylum. I am still, it's just the battle is so much harder. So talk with trusted groups, talk with your local parishes, anything like that. We've seen coalescing amongst the Catholic churches. We've seen it amongst Jewish community synagogues, everything like that, that they will also provide or find people that will give you the right information.
And Tammy, make sure that you don't go to someone where their front window for their law office says pupusas, haircut, and immigration. That is someone that is not meant for you to go to get immigration advice. You wouldn't do that for a cardiologist. You wouldn't do that for any other person in your life. So don't say, oh, well, my cousin went to that place and got it done. No. Yeah. We need to make sure you actually go to people who actually know what the current situation, the current law, the current needs, the current risks are. And that doesn't mean the place with the papuseria. So just be careful.
Don't get the legal advice. I think also the other thing I try to let people understand is that immigration is very complex. It is one of the most complex fields. And if there is an attorney that says, I do everything, you got a divorce, you got a personal injury, yeah, I can also immigrate your family, I can do all of it, it's not a problem. I would advise folks to find someone that they know immigration, that's their focus, because even amongst immigration, Ileana does business immigration, I used to do it, I am not up to date, I don't do them really now. There's some attorneys that only do removal defense, so they are protecting people from being deported, but they don't know anything about business immigration. Find someone that is what they have focused their careers on. Go get the pupusa, but don't get, the legal advice.
I know, but it's the same concept of we just because we need to go to a doctor doesn't mean we go to a generalist. We have to go to a doctor who specializes and subspecializes in the area of what our needs are. With immigration law, most people think as long as it's an attorney, that's all that matters. No, especially right now, especially in the circumstances we're in, you need to go to someone who has a record of being an advocate, being someone who really fights for immigrants and not just have 6 areas of law. This is not anything against my colleagues or my fellow attorneys. We're doing things for the safety of the public and the safety of immigrants. And we need to protect those who need the protection, which are the victims of the abuse and the fraud. So we need to make sure that everyone understands you really need to do your homework and you really need to get a specialist. And I'm not saying certified specialist or anything. I'm just saying someone who has experience in your typical case.
Yeah, and I love the comparison with the doctors, right? Like, oh, this doctor's really cheap, I'll just go there and get no one says that. Or, and just because a doctor's really expensive, you would still need to see, are there any medical violations or anything like that? The concern right now is that people are desperate, they're afraid. And when people are desperate and afraid, they are easily vulnerable to being scammed. That is not unusual. That happens, unfortunately, pretty common in immigration. And what I always want to make sure is that people don't get scammed.
Yep.
Well, thank you very much to our esteemed panelists, Nikki Mehrpoo, Valeria Garcia Tavarez, Tammy Lynn, and Ileana Rivera. Thank you very much for your time and your expertise and for gracing us with your presence and your knowledge. Thank you to DEI members that are here today, Rich Hahn, Crystal Jenkins, Christine Praria, Candace Russell, Micaiah Clark, and also our NALA administration that is here with us. We encourage paralegal viewers to obtain their CP designations through NALA. Thank you again, ladies. Thank you very much for gracing us with this wonderful, informative webinar.
Thank y'all for doing this, and also for all the people that are, watching this, for doing your job, because honestly, even though, we're attorneys, support staff is one of the most vital things in anyone's practice. Doesn't matter, nonprofit, private, whatever it is. So thank y'all for educating yourselves and doing this.
And please feel free as NALA members to reach out on LinkedIn or any place if you need a little bit of guidance or advice and you're a paralegal out there that's a little lost. The mentors are meant to be there for people, and especially right now. So LinkedIn is a good place for you to connect with us and see if we can assist you in any way.
Absolutely. Collaboration couldn't be more important now more than ever. And so, yeah, thank you so much for having us. And thank you to those watching this webinar for the work that you do.